the mic on.
Oh, I thought I had. It's gone off. Oh, if you move it, it switches itself off. Great. Good afternoon, good evening, everybody, and welcome to our March Cabinet meeting, final Cabinet meeting of the year, which is quite remarkable. It's come around very quickly, it seems to me. So we'll kick off first of all. Before I start, I'd just like to need to inform you that item 15 has been withdrawn. Under apologies, we have apologies from Matthew Fulton McAllister, I should say, Councillor Fulton McAllister and Councillor Kidman. I believe there are no declarations of interest. A question has been received, a public question has been received from Mr. James Hawkins. This is a question on the motion that went to full council regarding the UEA night bus. I believe Mr. Hawkins is not here, so there will be an answer to that question posted in the minutes. So moving on to item 4, there are no questions to Cabinet members. Item 5 is the minutes. This is to approve the accuracy of the minutes of the meeting on the 7th of February. And see those in favour. Thank you. And now we move on to item 6, the corporate plan. Before that, we've got scrutiny committee recommendations on the corporate plan from their meeting last Thursday. The chair of scrutiny is not here. The recommendations should appear on the screen any minute now. So I'll go through those, and if Cabinet members, colleagues have got comments they wish to make on whether we wish to accept these recommendations, then we'll discuss each one in turn. So the first one on the corporate plan is involve scrutiny committee in the development of the business planning process for the corporate plan and the associated corporate performance framework. Are we all happy with that? Yeah? The second one is consult a consultation on the corporate plan with young people in primary and high school. Now, what I do know is that there were opportunities given to be part of stakeholder events to high schools, but they were unable to participate because they're just so busy with the curriculum and everything else they're doing. So I think actually just doing again what we previously did isn't going to work. We actually need to look at ways that we can involve more young people. So I suggest we amend that, and I'd be interested to hear what colleagues think, to explore ways to involve more young people in corporate plan consultations. Yep. Okay. The third recommendation is ensure that the corporate plan commits to provision of access to services for those individuals who do not have digital knowledge or access. Now, I think we do that already, and I'd like to suggest, and I'll be interested in colleagues' views on this, that we edit that so it says ensure that the corporate plan commits to continue the provision of access to services for those individuals who do not have digital knowledge or access. Is that acceptable? And then the fourth one is explore ways to better capture demographic data to ensure that all appropriate communities have been consulted. This is without, I think it means without deterring people from responding. So are there any thoughts, comments on that, Beth? Councillor Jones?
So obviously we want to be have as much data as we can. I suppose having sat through the scrutiny committee, my one small sort of comment would be that we were challenged over the use of Get Talking Norwich and the requirement to log in, and that was collecting data, is my understanding. So I suppose it's what other ways, but I think either if that can be incorporated in a survey in a different way, but it feels like we were capturing stuff and that was an issue in terms of not what it was restricting people's engagement with it. And I think the primary thing is to make sure people engage in the consultation. That's got to be the number one priority before anything else. But I suppose, yes, exploring other ways. I suppose just more a comment that we've tried different versions, and it's a bit of a challenge to find which is the best option to make sure the number one priority, which is that engagement in the consultation itself, has got to be first and foremost.
I mean, we were being told by officers, and it's been repeated, that the way we're doing it is best practice. But I also do recall, like you, Beth, that previously Scrutiny Committee made a criticism which was the exact opposite of this, and it just seemed as a lack of consistency. So previously we were collecting the data and we were criticised for potentially deterring people. So now we don't collect it, we don't make it compulsory, and now we're being criticised for that. And it does feel that actually, whichever way we do it, certain members of scrutiny are going to argue against it, and we're never going to win. But Adam, did you want to come in?
Yeah,
Councillor Giles?
I've gone forever, but I mean, obviously there was a recommendation from the Scrutiny Committee following budget scrutiny, asking Cabinet to consider reducing the quantity of Get Talking Norwich consultations that require such demographic information to be provided in order to increase the take-up of consultation responses. This obviously conflicts to a certain extent with the recommendation that's coming from the following month, and obviously there are advantages and disadvantages to the advantages of taking demographic information. Equally, we want to maximise the quantity of responses. So I suppose there's a conversation to be had there about the best way forward.
There is. I mean, we could amend it to explore ways to better capture demographic data without deterring people from responding, maybe. Do you want to come back, Beth?
I suppose it's something that we will consider, which are the best ways forward, because I think we've tried both, and we need to have a think about maybe what applies to what consultations, that where it's appropriate. I think it's something that just is about having wider discussion more than anything.
Yeah, I mean, we do need to, because there does seem to be a lack of consistency in the messages coming from Scrutiny Committee. So, so before we finally agree what we're going to do, you wanted to ask a question, Lucy?
Yes, if that's okay. So the question is to the monitoring officer. Do you actually alter the recommendations of scrutiny here, Cabinet? Or do you do your response in the third column? Because I just caught that you're thinking of changing it to continue to as a recommendation, and I don't imagine that will be correct. But on what scrutiny put forward, I think there are different ways of doing collecting personal data. So I don't want you to get confused about the different options that were talked about. It's not. It's probably worth talking to the officers about that.
Okay. Do you want to answer that? Yeah. Yes, Mira. Yes.
Yes, thank you. Is the recommendation from the Scrutiny Committee which the Cabinet is asked to consider either accept or reject or amend? So it's in the gift of the Cabinet to make that decision.
So are we going to, with this, are we going to say, what was your suggested wording, Beth? Can you remember now?
No, you said consider exploring ways to better capture demographic data where appropriate.
Without deterring, do you want to say that? Without deterring participation, add that on?
Yeah.
We don't want to do that. Okay. That's what we will do. And then finally, add a section to the corporate plan that the council will commit to create more posts that work with the community and more posts which will see people face to face. I mean, I've got a real worry about us committing to more posts in a document when the budget also has been agreed and those posts are not included in the budget. I don't think we can do that here. That would be totally wrong. So I think we need to amend this. Beth?
I think also it's a bit too vague for me to be able to support at this point. It's work with the community. Well, as a council, that is our role, to work with the people of Norwich, and it's not specifying in what area. And given the HRA is a very large part of our budget that works with the community, there will be areas that potentially might want to expand or change at different points. But I would want that to be on an evidence base, that we spend the money where there is an identified need. I think this is too vague to accept at this point.
Okay, I accept that as well. I'm seeing nodding heads. So I wonder, could we amend this so that it says, add a section into the corporate plan that the council will commit to continue to provide face-to-face contact for those who most need it? Because I think that captures the spirit of what's being proposed. But it doesn't, here and now, commit us to, for example, additional posts with no budget. Okay.
Can we have a consensus?
Yeah, you agree? Thank you very much, Samira. Glad you're here. And then looking at section 8 of the report, the recommendation, and this is around the assets non-housing 5-year plan. Provide the minutes of the future shape of Norwich Board meeting which approved the business case for the assets 5-year plan. Are there any comments or thoughts on that? We have agreed to provide a briefing for scrutiny committee members on that. Yeah, Beth?
I think given what you've just said about providing briefing, I think that seems appropriate. I think there are a lot of internal meetings that take place, and at which point what do we make minutes for different things that are internal available? I think there's a process that we follow around briefings that is an appropriate process that we use as elected members to be informed of things, and that seems an appropriate way to deal with it.
Yeah, I mean, it's an officer-led group, but it is there to implement decisions that we've made. It's not making policy decisions itself, and there are quite a few officer-led groups like that, which need to look at options for delivery and speak freely, and they need to be able to do that. So I mean, on that basis, as you say, Beth, where do you stop? So ELT, CLT, we're going to publish the minutes for those to everybody. Are we going to publish the agendas? Are we then going to publish reports? I'm not sure where that would end, and I think we need to draw a line. So I think the briefing is probably adequate. Do we agree with that?
Good.
Thank you. Good. So we can now move on to the corporate plan. So this is item 6, substantive item 6, and it's in my name. So I first want to say I'm proud to introduce our new draft corporate plan for 2024 to 29, which has been developed for and with the people of Norwich. This has been underpinned by thorough consultation, including more than 900 citywide conversations. It is because of this that we have called the plan We Are Norwich. That's we underlined. It's the word we that makes this a truly new and exciting proposition for the way we work, what we do and what we prioritise. The plan's contents are wholly developed from the priorities and challenges raised during the engagement process with you, our residents, councillors, our workforce, our partners, businesses, charities and voluntary, creative and cultural organisations. While some of the areas of work the people of Norwich highlighted as priorities sit outside our direct control, we are committed to using our convening, influencing and advocacy powers to advance them. The approach the plan proposes is one of working together, identifying local needs, aspirations and ambitions, co-designing solutions with local communities and partners, and focusing on outcomes rather than outputs. As such, it enables and empowers communities and council colleagues to dynamically respond to changing needs throughout the city, delivering tailored solutions with more impact and addressing issues where and when the need is greatest. It's a different way of working to previous plans, which tied us to delivering specific outputs rather than achieving wider outcomes, and which were devised by us outside of Norwich's various individual contexts with little flexibility to adapt to the changing world around us. This will be a journey as we shift our culture and the processes to align with new ways of thinking and greater participation of the communities we serve. We're at the beginning of this process with a plan before you today, a document that truly reflects the voice of the people of Norwich. As we move forward to deliver the plan, further consultation and engagement will take place, and that's really important to note, and greater involvement of communities in the decisions and actions we take will be secured. This, we hope, will drive ever greater engagement and help us become more efficient, more effective, and above all, fully collaborative. As I mentioned, this is one of the largest and most comprehensive consultations we have ever undertaken. We didn't focus on numerical representation. To do so would have meant understanding the Norwich population statistically and then inviting representative samples to take part in each type of engagement. Such an approach may be appropriate to running a citizens' assembly, for example, or setting up a resident satisfaction survey in which we set a baseline for tracking changes over time. But rather, we sought a rich picture of how a broad selection of different kinds of people from different contexts feel about specific issues. In so doing, it was important we did not require respondents to submit demographic data about themselves. Aligned with the advice of our independent and expert engagement consultants, we noted that to do so would be a barrier to participation and limit what people might tell us. So, to prioritise higher response rates and more meaningful insights, the sharing of demographic information was optional for participants. Ensuring that the widest range of people within Norwich were involved in this process and those most in need were fully represented, we undertook both online and in-person consultation methods. Alongside working with partners to understand the concerns of underrepresented, vulnerable and disadvantaged groups, our on-street engagement took place in locations specifically chosen to give voice and agency to those harder to reach. During its committee journey, the plan and its appendices have given rise to some questions in connection to our engagement with young people. We reached out to partners and agencies working with young people during the consultation process and incorporated the views of young people from the latest City Vision engagement process. We recognise that engaging with children and young people is important, so we would again seek to ensure their input and views are heard as we move forward and embark on the next steps, and that is our business planning process. Through that process, we will also consider our internal infrastructure, ensuring it is fit and robust enough to deliver our ambitions. We will develop a performance framework to enable us to assess impacts and align resources and activity to meet the outcomes of the plan. The plan offers an ambitious and exciting approach to our work over the next 5 years. I thank all those who spared the time to shape it and, in doing so, helped us grow as an organisation. I wholeheartedly believe that this plan offers us a real chance to be the best we can be, and most important, that it delivers the best for the people of Norwich, so we can be a fair and thriving city full of ambition. And I recommend it to you and welcome your comments. Thank you. So, are there any officers who want to come and join us at the table, who, just in case there are any questions? Hello, Helen. And clearly you've worked hard throughout this process and very successfully and very effectively, so we thank you for that. Are there any comments or questions? Beth? Councillor Jones, should I say?
Thank you. I suppose I just want to start saying I'm really proud that we're bringing this forward, and as part of the new leadership team to the council to be able to bring forward a new corporate plan, it's part of the process. I suppose it's more than that to me. When I look at this, there's one phrase that stands out: tackling the root cause of health inequalities. Now, my day job is as a nurse, and I do that to the best of my ability, but I see the increasing challenges people face. And it was actually my motivation, that one sentence, was for becoming a councillor, that there is only so much as one nurse you can change, but actually in a local authority, the impact you can have on people's health, well-being and lifetime outcomes is so significant, and that runs all the way through this plan, and I'm really proud of that. When we're talking about a safer city, health and well-being, we're talking about housing. These are all things that change people's life outcomes and their health, their well-being, their happiness. And for me, I'm incredibly proud that those things come through so clearly. Also, that actually this plan sets forward our ambition to our partnership working. That's something we've already really started to promote. I'm really proud to be the chair of the Norwich Health and Wellbeing Partnership, and also our New Safer Norwich Partnership. And it's that we, as one organisation, we cannot implement everything. And we have an awful lot of people in the city who want to make it a better place and work for its residents. And we can be a key person in bringing those people together. And again, I think it is that sense of togetherness as well in it. So I think I like the sort of tone of it, and the ambition of it is something I'm really proud. And the detail I can go into when we go to council in more detail. But I think for me, it's quite a personal thing that it's putting forward that ambition that really works for our residents and their well-being. Also, that we needed that refresh because the world has changed in the last few years. It has become a more challenging place year on year for people, and actually our corporate plan needs to reflect that. And I think it does very effectively. So I'm really proud of this document and be pleased to support it today.
Thank you. Thank you. Are there any other comments? Or not everyone's happy with it? Yeah, I think we'll have a lot more to say on Tuesday night. Lucy, do you have a question?
Thank you, Councillor Sturridge. Yeah, I'm very, very glad that people were asked for the first time actually what they wanted to see in the plan, which is something we had long asked for, and also that we've had early input, and a lot of councillors' ideas are in there from all of us. So I think that's really great. And thank you to officers for undertaking that really significant piece of work. And you can see it is part of the engagement exercise and a direct result of what people want to see. So, yeah, well done. It seems like people want to see very similar things when we analysed it compared to the other one. They want to see similar things to the aims that the council had for the previous corporate plan in many ways. They perhaps expressed it more, honestly, compared to budget consultations, etc. It could suggest that we, as a council, we haven't really delivered very well against previous objectives. I think we may have covered this, but going forward, the only way we'll really know if we're delivering against objectives is to have that ongoing reconsultation and to make sure that it is representative. I realise it's expensive to do representative sampling, and I think that's the real issue, isn't it? But we do need to make sure we oversample some groups, make sure we really know. I've had concerns raised with me, which I've taken up with you, that we weren't perhaps getting into the level of detail that some really important user groups wanted. So I wanted to ask, will you commit to regularly, explicitly and directly assessing a representative sample of residents' perception of how well the council's delivering against the plan and where it's not?
I think one of the first things I would say, and just one of the first premises, I guess, is that a lot of the deliverables in the plan are not short-term, so they're actually making improvements in areas over a period of time. So the fact that people have said similar things doesn't mean to say there's been no progress, or the fact that an issue has remained alive doesn't mean to say that there's been no progress. Some of the particularly the work we need to do in partnership to tackle some of the really big challenges in the city, they are long-term challenges. So that's the first thing I would say. In terms of, I think we've answered this. We've actually said when we were looking at the scrutiny committee recommendations, what we need to do is to try and capture the right level of data so that we ensure that we're as representative of the local community as we can be, but without deterring people from taking part. And I think there is a tension between those two things. So I think we have committed that we'll look at that going forward. And I think the other thing is, in terms of doing this now, it's really important to note the changes that have taken place since the last plan was agreed. Massive changes have taken place over the last few years, not least of all the COVID pandemic, which has driven huge changes in society and in the economy. So there's a new administration that seeks to look at the world in that context, and that's really, really important that we do that rather than wait. And I think it's good practice actually to have a refresh from time to time. And the fact if people keep raising the same issues, well, maybe that's because those are really big, knotty issues that are going to take a long time to resolve. But I don't know, Helen, do you want to comment on that?
Yeah, just briefly to say that we, within various teams within my service area, we are looking at different ways to engage, different ways to ensure we're engaging with the right people, and so that there is work underway to improve what we do, to consider the best ways of doing it as we go forward, and to expand that around the organisation and make sure all teams within the council will understand how to best engage and when to do it and how to do it. So there is work going on, and we can consider some of the stuff in that.
Yeah. So Beth, did you want to come back?
Yeah, just on some of it around things haven't changed. That's the first point. I suppose also we've got to look at the world we're living in. Picking out particularly the point around reducing rough sleeping, that that's something we will continue to do, but we are actually backing the national trend. We're existing in a world where rough sleeping is going up significantly. I believe nationally, London was an increase 23%. But actually in Norwich we're down at 5%, I think.
Five people.
Yeah,
5 people.
So 5 people. So, if I feel still 5 too many to me, but we are bucking the trend in terms of those numbers are going down. But that is a work in progress, and it will always be a challenge. So I think it will always be something we'll want to have ambitions around. So I think there's a reason those themes are consistent, because they will always be important. But actually we've got to look at our progress also in that context of we've got a Tory government, that the world is getting harder for people out there. Also in terms of measuring it, we can look at a performance framework, as part of business, as we go forward in business planning, developing that will help us understand progress. But this is all next steps that, we're on an ongoing process of this. It's not an end point document. It's a living document that we will continue to work with.
And that's a point really well made. I'm using that particular example of rough sleeping, where we know from the last overnight counts that there are only 5 rough sleepers. I think the public perception might be that there are many more, and so the public might not be aware of the progress that's been made by us, but also our colleagues through Pathways, in particular St Martin's. So it doesn't, because the public continue to raise issues, doesn't mean to say that we're not making progress, or that improvements haven't taken place. But we take that at face value, because the public are telling us that rough sleeping is a concern, and we share that concern, and we're not complacent. So, are there any other comments? If not, can we move to the vote on the recommendation, which is to adopt this for onward transit to full council, which will be next Tuesday? Yeah. All those in favour? Thank you. Thank you. Okay, so item 7 is adoption of the Greater Norwich Local Plan. Thanks, Helen, and thanks for your answer to the question. Okay. Hello, Mike. So the first thing I need to say about the Greater Norwich Local Plan, that this is the final step in a very long 8-year process. Mike's going to... I think 7.5. 7.5, okay. 7.5 years since the council agreed to do this work, and it's great that it's coming to fruition. An awful lot of really hard work has gone into it by a number of officers here and in the other councils. It's a hugely complex process, requiring a vast amount of evidence to be collated, presented and examined, and I do need to express our thanks to all those across all 3 councils and partner agencies, that includes the County Council and the Broads Authority, who have contributed to it. And particularly to colleagues from across this council who have contributed to its formation through the work of the Sustainable Development Plan, and also to colleagues from across the other councils and political divides who have come together to resolve difficult issues. This is a great example of joint and sustained partnership working. It is clearly in our common interest to plan for a rapidly growing city as a whole, irrespective of our outdated boundaries. That way we stand the best chance of delivering for the city as a whole and aligning the growth to the provision of infrastructure, which we do through the Greater Norwich Growth Board. The achievement of reaching this stage in the local plan preparation is nationally significant. Changing legislation and resourcing to local government have created problems for large numbers of authorities. Only 13 local plans were adopted across England last year, and a significant number of local authorities do not have up-to-date plans in place. There are considerable benefits from having an adopted local plan. It gives us the best chance of delivering development that meets the need of our communities, with over 40,000 new homes to be delivered in the period up to the end of the plan, the majority of which will be built in and around the city, with good access to our growing employment base and essential services. There are a number of benefits of having an adopted plan in place. It maximises the prospect of us securing the affordable housing we so desperately need. It de-risks the development of the allocated sites. It increases the likelihood of securing external support in order to deliver the quality of development that is sought, and it reduces the chances of us seeing speculative development, which would be harmful to our economic development and environmental assets. The report before you firstly reports that the highly positive inspector's report has endorsed the Greater Norwich local plan strategy, sites and monitoring framework, with some main modifications to be included in the adopted plan. Almost all local plans, secondly, require main modifications. They reflect the passage of time since we submitted the plan in 2021 and evidence considered at the plan's examination. Overall, they strengthen the plan. And thirdly, the main modifications most related to Norwich are these. The policies for East Norwich have been updated to reflect more recent evidence since 2021 and have been streamlined. The policies provide a firm basis for our ambitious plans to be delivered. The Cossey contingency site is no longer in the plan, though we would like to see it developed in the long term, as it is a well-located and sustainable site. The examination evidence showed that there are sufficient sites in the plan to meet housing needs, so a contingency site is not needed. And then finally, smaller sites in the city where landowners have changed their view on development are no longer in the plan. These are at Burr Street, Lower Clarence Road and Ipswich Road. And then point 4 is there are wider benefits from the other main modifications. The changes to policy 3 will address nutrient neutrality issues, our old friend. The reframing of the approach to new settlements will assist consideration of their potential role compared with other growth options in future plans, and gypsy and traveller sites will be allocated. Overall, the main modifications strengthen the plan. This supports the significant benefits of adopting the plan set out in the report. These include helping to meet our housing and job needs, addressing climate change and providing infrastructure, including green and blue infrastructure. I will explain further at the council meeting next week that will be required to adopt the plan. I'll hand over now to Graham. I know Mike's joined us at the table, but Graham, I think, is going to mention some further changes to the plan. So over to you, Graham.
Thank you very much.
It's the red button you press.
I made that mistake.
Thank you. I thought I'd been able to work that now. This must be our third occasion, I promise. Yeah, we sent around a brief update to members. I trust everybody's had a chance to see it. In the run-up to the publication of the council paper to formally endorse the plan, we're doing some proofreading and checking, and a couple of very minor modifications have been needed to the plan. We just want to be legally watertight, so I want to bring those to your attention. The changes to the plan effectively relate to the emerging village clusters plan in South Norfolk, and the nuance that whilst the rest of their site allocations are being replaced by the plan, in those areas where they are still doing that planning exercise for, the historic allocations made in those areas will not be superseded by the adoption of this plan, but they will remain live as part of the planning framework until the village clusters plan is adopted. That was accurately referred to in the plan where it was first addressed, but a couple of subsequent places were inconsistent with that. So the proposals amend the text in the plan. That's now being updated, so the version that is there, click handlings of accounting for council meeting are all up to date, but that's a change that has been made since the plan was first published 7 days prior to this meeting. And the other 2 points are just correcting a couple of glitches in this report for Cabinet, which are a correction to the housing numbers, which transposed some of the numbers in that, and another line correction around strategic land, as the council report largely mirrors the cabinet report here. Both those amendments have been made to the full council report presented on Tuesday. We just, for reasons of clarity and legal robustness, wanted to be clear that we made those changes since the paper was published.
Not contentious. Mike, did you want to add anything?
No, just to reiterate, it's been a long process, but very close to the end, and there are major advantages to adopting this plan. As Graham said, there's been a slowdown in adoption in recent years. It's really important we get this plan through. We must have one in place by December 2026. This plan, as set out in the report, has numerous benefits for our area.
Absolutely. Okay, have we got any comments or questions from colleagues? I saw Adam, Councillor Giles first.
I was getting a pen out of my pocket, actually.
Okay, are there any other comments or questions? Just a word of advice, Adam, don't go to an auction. Any other comments or questions? No, okay. Lucy, do you have a question?
Thank you, yeah, I do. Congratulations on getting this finished and over the line. I remember being involved in this application when I first elected last time, so it's really nice to see this done now. And I hope we'll have some development management policies updates so that keep that on you too soon. But I wanted to ask a question about the post-carbon economy and the way it impacts on this plan. The plan foregrounds the post-carbon economy as important and defines this as an economy in which greenhouse gas emissions are low and falling. In Greater Norwich, the focus on that will be on 3 low-carbon and high-growth economic sectors: clean energy, agri-food and ICT digital. And in line with that above, the strategy states growth potential is highest in 5 high-impact sectors identified in the Norfolk and Suffolk Economic Strategy: advanced manufacturing, engineering, agri-tech, energy, ICT, digital culture and life sciences. And growth of those sectors will help Greater Norwich play a key role nationally and internationally in assisting the transformation to a post-carbon economy, which is good to hear. But my question is, how does the airport fit in with that as the city's second largest site allocation by a long way on page 104, when the fact is that new research by the New Economics Foundation suggests that, contrary to the notion that local airports support the economy, they deplete local economies by essentially being a highly efficient funnel that drains money out of regions and plows it back into rich London areas. And I could share that research with you. It's not exactly the economic success story that the council's pretending it to be, as we know that air travel significantly depletes the local economy, as well as increasing carbon emissions.
I think Graham's going to pick that up, and I'd point out that the airport is responsible for many, many jobs in the local economy, in the local area, of all types, of all kinds, from what you might call sort of hotel services up to complex engineering jobs, and that is a really important part of the local economy. And we recently saw from the airport the first all-electric non-carbon flight being trialled, so it's at the forefront of some pretty cool technology going forward. I haven't seen the research that you've quoted, Lucy. I'll happily look at it. There is other research which states the opposite, so as often is the case, but you know, I know that the Green Party do not support the airport, but just to make it clear, we support it, and we support all the jobs it creates and all the money it brings into the local economy. Graham, did you want to add anything?
I won't say a great deal because I don't want to get effectively drawn into a political debate. The issue, though, is clearly the plan seeks to set a vision which encourages effectively a post-carbon economy as we through. There's a monetary framework that supports and hopefully should enable us to set some metrics and measure around that. As part of the plan, we look at housing and our industrial needs and allocate land for all those purposes. There is land that's allocated for development at and around the airport. It isn't all allocated essentially for airport-related growth, because some of it is for general industrial purposes, which will further out the economic development benefits of the city if and when they're developed out and opened up through all that development, effectively by the delivery of the MDR some years ago. Clearly, as part of some of the initial options, we cast around for sites to look at growth. The airport is clearly an operational airport. There's a master plan in place that has been endorsed by the council and also by Broadland District Council. I believe it's supported by the county council for that. With that, it really would be unsound, effectively, and would risk the sounds of the entire plan for us to try and bring forward proposals that envisage anything other than the continuation of the airport as such. And so with that in mind, what you do, the plan effectively looks to maximise the economic benefits that arises and support that economic activity that goes on in the region.
Thank you, Graham. Really helpful. Okay, so if there are no other comments or questions, we've got, this is item 7, and we've got the recommendation at the front of the report. So all those in favour? Thank you very much. And that will also onward transmission to full council on Tuesday. So let's move on to item 8. That's the customer and digital strategy for 2024-2029. Matt, Councillor Packer, is going to present for us. Over to you, Matt.
Thanks, Mike. Norwich City Council's vision, as set out in the corporate plan 24 to 29, is to become a fair and thriving city full of ambition. Delivering on key priorities, being an open and modern council, and doing the basics well in an efficient, timely and well-informed way is key towards achieving this. This strategy outlines how we will support this vision through the development of our customer and digital services. Our residents are increasingly wanting to access our services digitally and at a time that suits them. By making our services straightforward, intuitive and available 24/7 in the way that we now expect from other organisations, will mean more customers use digital services by default. We recognise this is not a one-size-fits-all approach and that residents have varying needs. We will continue to provide traditional contact options, but face-to-face and by telephone, for those that have challenges with accessing digital services. This strategy is about enhancing the digital services that we have. By increasing the take-up of online services, we will make our services more cost-effective, enabling the council to focus resources on those who need them most. Extensive consultation and engagement with those who use our services has taken place, which has been used to shape the strategy, and an action plan will be developed to deliver key actions and objectives. Going forward, we will continue with our customer engagement, gathering feedback as we put this strategy into action to make sure that our digital services are accessible and easy to use. Thank you, Mike. I was just talking to Julia. Catherine, did you want to add anything to that?
No, I think you've covered it there. Thank you.
Thank you, Matthew. And yes, it's quite remarkable actually the level of digital channel shift that we've seen, and that's obviously I talked earlier on about changes since the pandemic. I think that use of digital channels has speeded up, and a lot more people are comfortable using them. That's good for them, often more convenient for them, and it's more cost effective for us. But of course, there are still people who are digitally excluded, and I know that we have incorporated in this plan ensuring that services are still there for those people. And you've done tremendous work on this, so thank you for that. Are there any comments or questions from colleagues, Cabinet colleagues? Everybody's saying they're happy. Lucy, do you have a question?
Thank you, yes I do. Thank you for the report. I wanted to point out that it would have been really much more useful if it could have outlined the assessment of the previous strategy that was 21 to 24 and built on it. But my question is about low-income households where most people actually use a smartphone and not a laptop and access the internet exclusively that way. And that has grown too in recent years. It's something we've seen grow. And the latest Ofcom survey shows that the lower the socio-economic group, the higher the reliance on smartphones. So 27% reliance solely on smartphones for lower incomes, and a third of the most vulnerable user group. So compared to 10% for the highest socio-economic group. So an increasing number of all users across the board access only by their mobiles. And it is possible, but it's difficult to access our website on the phone, I find myself, even with it adapted for phone and bookmark links. So we have got that risk of digital exclusion by the method, and an app would help with this. And I notice in there we do mention an app for staff internally, I think, as I understand that. And officers do tell me that the majority of our customers access our online services are doing it from a mobile, actually. And that can also help with the location to report issues, although a laptop can do that. And national guidance also says apps are a good idea for councils to develop, and many are doing so. Can you commit to sort of looking at the strategy to explore that further, to make sure that phone users are not inadvertently excluded?
Do you want to come back on that?
We are looking at, we are starting the work to create a new website, and as part of that we will look at apps across different systems. But one of the things that we have considered doing going forward with our new website is to prompt customers to download a shortcut of parts of the website so that they can put that on their mobile device for ease of access. So that's one of the things we are considering as part of the new website, which will give that app experience and a shortcut to the online services. Yeah.
Thank you very much for that. So, there are no other comments or questions. We'll move to the recommendation on the front page of the report. All those in favour? Thank you. Thank you. Moving to item 9, that's the pay policy statement 24-25. This is Paul, Councillor Kendrick.
Thank you very much, Chair. The Council is legally required to have and publish a pay policy statement and to be approved at full council annually. The pay policy should cover the remuneration of chief officers and the pay of lowest paid employees, definition of lowest paid employees, the relationship between the payments to the chief officer and the rest of the workforce. Pay policy statements covers all employees of Norwich City Council and not just senior pay arrangements. As what has changed for the next financial year, pay rates following the nationally agreed pay increases for 23-24 have been incorporated. This will be amended again to reflect the 24-25 pay increases once they are agreed. Trade unions have recently submitted pay claims for 24-25, with the exception of chief officers. The pay policy statement includes the pay ratios in respect to the lowest to highest paid and the medium to the highest paid. There's been a slight improvement in the pay ratios for both highest paid to lowest paid, 1 to 6.86 to 1 to 6.51, and highest paid to the medium earners from 4.68 to 1.428. Median pay is, as at the end of this month, will be £33,000 and £24, £33,000, £24 annually. The clarification as to appointments above 100,000 is contained in paragraph 2.4 of the pay policy statement. The pay structure for senior appointments was agreed by full council in September of 2020. The pay policy statement is agreed by the full council annually by the heads of service and above are cross-party member appointments. Going forward, proposed amendments to existing positions on salaries packages of over £100,000 a year or greater, which are within the remit of the agreed pay policy statement, will be made to a member appointments panel and won't be reported individually to the full council, with the exception of appointment of the head of paid service, the section 151 officer and the monitoring officer. Any new posts proposed on packages of £100,000 or above or permanently appointed outside the agreed packages will be subject to approval of the full council. I would ask this cabinet to approve this document and certainly be passed on to the full council next week. Thank you.
Thank you. Very comprehensive as ever. Dawn, hello, welcome. Have you got anything you wish to add?
No, nothing.
Covered it all. Good. Okay. Any comments or questions from colleagues? Yeah, Councillor Giles. Have you found it? There wasn't a pen you were looking for. No, you want to speak. Okay.
Yes, thanks, Mike. It would be remiss of me to, and I've been in trouble with the former leader if I didn't highlight, the opportunity for other local authorities, if they're interested in potentially paying a real living wage to their lowest paid staff, to do get in touch with the Norwich Real Living Wage Group, and be happy to provide them with support and assistance in reaching that goal.
Absolutely right. Oh, whoops. Absolutely. Thanks for that. Adam, Lucy, do you have a comment or a question? Or question, should I say?
Yes, thank you, I do. So, a couple of months ago, and I've followed it up since, I requested information on the pay structure for interim staff, because I know that the senior leadership team of officers are tracking that area as an area of concern that needs addressing and is being addressed due to a large amount of temporary and interim staff at all levels, including the senior roles. Could we have a similar policy developed? I know we don't have to, but could we? Or at least transparent reporting of pay for interim staff?
That was Dawn, that's you.
Yeah, certainly. I mean, I guess the difficulty with the kind of agencies and interims, I think as it says in the pay policy statement, wherever possible, we try and align that with our pay structure. There are some circumstances where that's not possible, and that can be on a very individual basis. So it's actually a pay structure for interims. There isn't a particular pay structure for interims because that's often dependent on market factors, particular negotiations. So I can't actually point to a pay structure, Councillor Gallagher, to provide that. Now, I've been giving some consideration to how we can track that. Obviously, we are closely scrutinising what's happening with our agency and interim around numbers and spend, and the trend is that agency and interim have been reducing. In terms of agency and interim, we have them covering established posts. So once they're on the permanent establishment, often when we go through organisational change, and there's potential for redundancies or to put people at risk, we tend to use agencies in those circumstances. We use them for project type work, so where we've got particular demands and needs that we will have agency in interim, and that is very much market driven, and that's why it's not easy to have a pay structure. In terms of monitoring trends, as I said, we give some consideration to that, and I think what we can do is something around provide numbers around what's happening with agency and interims. We currently provide that for the extended leadership team. I'm pretty sure I can convert something that's for members that doesn't breach any kind of data protection and personal information regarding that.
Thank you for that, Dawn. And obviously, as we know and has been discussed previously, the market conditions are quite difficult for some local authority staff, and there are areas where it's really difficult to recruit, and we have to remember that we've got services to provide and functions to carry on providing, and sometimes it's really difficult balancing act to do. Okay, if there are no other questions or comments on the pay policy statement, can we go to the recommendation on the front page of the report? All those in favour? Thank you. So we now move to item 10, which is funding approval for the 3 carbon reduction projects, and that is Councillor Hampton on page 261.
Thank you, and I'm really pleased to be bringing forward this paper today, which presents 3 opportunities for Council House to further on its climate agenda. Especially after 14 years of Tory government cuts to councils, we are often relying on external funding to be able to drive this work forward. So identifying opportunities where there is clear potential to cut emissions, bring social benefits and bring financial return has been a priority. The 3 projects here today all meet these criteria, and they relate to, firstly, our latest bid for Social Housing Decarbonisation Fund, and then our successful bid for funds towards installation of solar panels at Riverside Leisure Centre, and then an upcoming funding round anticipated to open with regards to heat network development. And I'll touch on each of those 3 a bit more shortly, but the reason they're all coming through now, in short, is that this is the last Cabinet member ahead of the election, and these are all projects which have deadlines, or are very likely to have deadlines which will fall within that pre-election period. So it is going to be necessary to delegate authority to relevant officers to take certain actions to progress these projects, and the details of which decisions and steps we're proposing to delegate are broken down in the recommendations on page 261 of the agenda pack. So the first project this paper covers is a bid we've already put in back in January for £2.5 million of funding from the government's Social Housing Decarbonisation Fund. And we're proposing to match fund this using £2.7 million from the Acre Capital Programme, which gives a total project value of £5.2 million to be spent over a 24-month period. We've successfully received HDF funding previously during its first wave, and utilise this as part of our ongoing and ambitious programme to improve the energy efficiency of our own council homes. This latest bid would deliver 672 energy efficiency measures on 261 dwellings, including external wall insulation, improved ventilation, solar PV and loft insulation, and these improvements will be focused on the least energy efficient homes in our stock. So if we're successful in this bid, hundreds more households across the city will be able to benefit from smaller homes and cheaper bills. These are measures that really will make a real difference to the residents that are set to benefit from them. We don't know the outcome of this bid yet, that's not likely to be until March, so that does mean if we're successful accepting those funds and taking important and early steps to deliver on this, will fall in the pre-election period, hence the recommendation to delegate appropriate powers. The second project this paper covers is a bid that has been made to add solar panels to Riverside Leisure Centre, and in this case we know already that it has been successful, which is really positive news. We've been awarded a £520,000 grant against the total cost of the scheme of £895,000, and as is covered in the report, the grant amount is lower than the total amount because the cost of the canopy the panels will be on couldn't be covered by the grant. The report and recommendations note that the £375,000 difference required from the council to put in can be funded by borrowing though. And more widely, our recommendation is that we delegate authority to the Chief Finance Officer to increase the General Fund Capital Programme by the £895,000 and to sign any documents relating to accepting the £520,000 grant. It's anticipated that these panels will reduce electricity usage by 33% and save 82 kilograms of carbon emissions per annum. So this is an important project, worthwhile investment, and over the course of its life it will deliver savings and be carbon negative. The final project this covers is regarding heat networks, which have long been identified as potential low carbon sources of energy for Norwich. Heat networks will be essential in providing sustainable and affordable heat to homes and businesses here and across the country, and we've already engaged in a pilot project with business to look at the feasibility of creating heat network zones in Norwich. There's a funding round anticipated to take place in June, which could help enable us to do further work on heat network feasibility and business case development. And again, we're asking to delegate authority to officers to pursue this opportunity as applying for, and if successful, accepting, signing a grant application could be impacted by the pre-election period. So that's a quick overview about aims and ambitions of relating to those projects and wider work in this area. Just to say thank you very much to those officers who have been involved in putting these bids together and more widely in driving forward work on the climate action that do support. And also, I know Scrutiny looked at the support at their meeting last week. I could be there. I've looked at the discussion since. They didn't seem to make any further recommendations to Cabinet on this, but it was a useful discussion and question session anyway. So thank you for members for considering this. I'll leave it there.
Thank you, Emma, and 3 excellent projects, I might say so. So, yeah, congratulations on this. Is there any officer comments? No? Everyone's happy? Okay. John, anything you want to say? No? No? Adam?
Thank you. I just want to thank Council Hampton and the Environmental Strategy team working in partnership with our Sport and Leisure Development Officer. Really fantastic news that we've been successful with this bid. Not only will it help to significantly reduce the carbon emissions of Riverside Leisure Centre, it will also enable it to be significantly more financially viable and ensure that places leisure are able to continue offering accessible and affordable sport and leisure for our residents into the future.
Excellent, thank you, thank you. Lucy, do you have a question?
Yes, thank you. Yeah, it's really good to see those 3 things coming forward. Getting on with it now in case we, before the elections. I'd like to just ask Councillor Hampton if you're confident that the housing team has enough capacity to get money like this going forward and get it out the door to deliver on a huge amount of work like this that needs to be done as a matter of urgency. If you look, that's 271 dwellings, got 14,500 of them. Are you satisfied that there's enough capacity to do that?
Thank you, and I might let Councillor Jones come in as well, seeing this housing team is very much within her remit. You're right, obviously, to meet our ambitions more widely across the whole of the stock, bringing it every home up to PCC and then ultimately to net zero, is going to take more work than we've ever done before, and big upscaling. You've seen the recent budget, obviously, more resource has been put in both in the housing side and environmental strategy to drive some of this forward. Anything else to add, Beth?
I suppose, yeah, just, the HRA has allocated extra money, as you said, and that would be, we're always exploring new options and where we need to expand. And I think, I can't think there's an area that couldn't do without more resource in the, in an ideal world, but we see this as a significant priority. We are taking it seriously, and it's a big part of the discussion going forward in terms of housing, of once we've got the stock condition survey back, then actually we can really understand where we're going forward. And, seeking funding from any source, that boosts what we can do, we're always looking for those opportunities. But we've got to balance what we're doing and what we're spending on achieving that. And it's a bigger conversation, I suppose, that will come forward as part of that, in terms of what the needs are of the stock.
And I always add the conclusion I always put in response to such questions. Obviously, we're having to balance resource at the moment and prioritise more than we'd ideally like to go further and faster. We want, proper sustaining funding from government, not to be chasing after these pots and having to do really drastic things to rejig budgets. Hopefully this is the last time we're having to go through a budget process against that difficult backdrop, but that's what we really need to change to see this go at pace that we want to see and that's needed to meet net zero and get all our residents out of fuel poverty and living in warm homes.
Here, well said, absolutely. Okay, are there no other comments or questions from Cabinet colleagues? So the recommendation is on page 261. The recommendation is on 261. Can I see those in favour, please? Thank you very much. Unanimous. So we now move on to item 11. This is the write-off of irrecoverable debt over £50,000, and it's Paul Councillor Kendrick's report.
Thank you very much. Well, these decisions are obviously carefully looked at. I should hasten to say that it does come a point, and indeed it's true both in the private and public sector, where you have to recognise, for example, where a company has gone insolvent, you're never going to be able to recover that particular debt. However, as I always do say, that does not prevent you in the future, if the means become available, to actually chase that debt up. But it is quite clearly sounding in the currency sense that we should actually write these debts off.
Okay. Yes, fairly straightforward. Are there any comments or questions from colleagues? I've got a question, Lucy, on this. No? Okay. So we'll go to the recommendation on page 267. Can I see those in favour, please? Thank you. Unanimous. Now back to Beth. This is item 12, contract award for the main contractor for the development at Argyle Street, page 273.
Thank you. This is really exciting. So we're looking to award the main contractor to build 14 new high energy efficient properties at Argyle Street that will be 100% social housing. We looked at a number of options for this process, and we settled on inviting 5 local suppliers to bid from East Anglia. This was a really important opportunity to establish a new relationship with an SME. This was a robust process that looked at both quality and cost, so we were achieving competitive pricing alongside assuring that we were achieving social value as well. By the deadline of the process, we'd received one tender with two of those pulled out at the very last minute. But this one bid that has gone through a very robust process. And I'm confident in the scrutiny of this, particularly having discussed with officers the additional engagement that the company has had with us, and showing that their approach is really community centred and they've got a really strong track record working efficiently with local authorities. So I think it's an important opportunity to establish a new relationship with another company. And this has also been reviewed by the employer's agent Oxbury as well. This development will be part funded by right to buy receipts. We've also got funding from Government Brownfield Land Release Fund, but we are asking to use Section 106 affordable housing money that comes from development of Bury Road. So it's money coming from a number of sources to achieve this, but as ever, we're pursuing that ambition for high quality housing at social rent for the residents of our city. I think it's important to look at the repayment for this would be, I think, about 29 years. I think it's over about 29 years. Is that correct? From memory. So it's really exciting opportunity. And I think it's that every opportunity to build is important, but also expanding who we're working with and the opportunities that will bring. A company that they're based in Colchester, Marfleet and Blythe Limited, and they're wanting to expand and work here. And I was really taken with some of the discussions I've been told about with them, that they'd already really made an effort to understand the area they were going to be working in, which I think is important, and the challenges that will have and the awareness they need to have around the local community. So I think an interesting company for us to work in partnership with going forward, hopefully. So I would ask that we agree to award the contract to Marfleet and Blythe Limited and to utilise the 106 money towards this development.
Thank you. And again, more quality housing at social rent, really, really important. Are there any questions or comments from colleagues? Okay. Do you have a question, Lucy? So, well, congratulations on more social housing, Beth. We continue, it's never as much as we'd like, but
get them all to agree.
every bit is really important. So, yeah, all those in favour. Okay. Right. Are you getting nervous?
Yeah. Good.
Okay, so the recommendation is on page 273. All those in favour? All those against? No, that's unanimous. That's unanimous. Thank you, and well done, Beth. More social housing. Let's move on then now to item 13. Now, this is response to the recommendations on retrofitting, and we did kind of cover this at the last meeting. Emma, do you want to just start off on this?
Yeah, apologies for any of the confusion, especially last cabinet meeting about how we respond to those recommendations. I think we gave a fairly lengthy verbal update then, which is captured in the minutes, and there's a summary group that's been circulated as part of this agenda as well. So I won't go over all that again, but because you weren't anticipating it coming last month, Lucy, if you wanted to, ask a question at this point, we welcome that. But things that since then, we've had the budget, which I think has covered some of the recommendations. We've had a bit more discussion platform as well. So, as I say, unless you have a question, I propose we sort of leave it there for now.
Yep. Is that okay, Lucy?
Yes, so this is the first time I've seen it written down, so it did come to cabinet. We worked quite hard at scrutiny to get it over the line, so it came in December. So it's good to see it now actually written down, the recommendations. There are a few that say no recommendation, none proposed. I think about half of them actually have none proposed on them, which is slightly concerning, considering it's a cross-party group informed by a huge amount of input from officers. So I would just like to ask that it comes back to scrutiny for updates. I think scrutiny does that anyway, but actually comes back to see. Obviously, a lot hinges around stock condition survey, and that's a lot of the non-proposed things are due to stock conditions. So my main question is, when will the stock condition survey report? What's the date of that? Because it's obviously key to any kind of progress.
Stock condition survey, I believe we're hoping for in the next month or two. We've got bits of it, but waiting for all the data to be pulled together. It's imminent. This is a lot of work. It's just a weird timing of things that I welcome a lot of this, and I'm keen to engage with a lot of this, but the timing's just a little bit awkward in terms of waiting for that, and it's not a no from me in terms of the HRA and a lot of things. It's just bear with me, and I'd be keen to engage with scrutiny going forward as part of that discussion. I think would be really helpful as we've got that information.
Emma?
Yeah, on the point with regards to it coming back to scrutiny, obviously scrutiny control their own agenda on the whole, but it was something scrutiny members raised as well at the meeting where they came back to consider recommendations, and we welcomed it at that point. If that's where scrutiny members want to take it, we'll be involved and keep feeding into it going forward. With regards to some of them not having recommendation assigned to them, part of the reason we responded slightly differently than normal, by quite a lengthy verbal response rather than just accepting, rejecting, is that there was very little in there that we don't agree with in principle, or we can see where it's coming from, but it is dependent on certain other things happening, or it is already kind of there in the thinking. So it's not that we're rejecting most of these outright, apart from a couple relating to housing that were very specific. These are all things that we will take this thinking forward if it's not already ingrained, but as I say, the detail and the nuances of how far we can go at this point in time, we sort of delivered at last month's cabinet meeting. So I hope that explains that a little bit more.
Thank you. Yeah, Beth, come back.
Just, I suppose to echo that it's not a rejection of things, it's looking to incorporate them and understand where they fit with everything else that's going on. So, for example, in terms of reworking the HRA business plan, it's considering retrofitting in terms of our long-term planning. That's going to be another process. So I suppose it's not rejecting it outright, but it's saying it's going to happen probably in a slightly different way, that retrofitting will be considered as part of the wider business plan and how that fits in, and retrofitting will be a project because we've got in terms of EPCC and that sort of thing. So it's going to be there, but I can't commit to it specifically in that way, but it's a lot of things are going to be achieved in slightly different means.
Great, thank you very much. Thank you. Shall we move on then now to item 14? This is the non-housing assets 5-year plan. There's a below the line section, so before I hand over to Councillor Kendrick, does anybody want to discuss or ask a question about the below the line section? If not, then there's no need to exclude the public. We will continue. Paul.
Thank you very much. Well, this item was addressed at the scrutiny committee, and I shall repeat, I think, what I said. The management of our assets are absolutely vital to this local authority. They produce a great deal of the revenue that has enabled this authority to maintain the level of services which, frankly, a lot of other councils have been unable to do. And so we have this strategy here. I believe it's philosophy. I entirely agree with its philosophy. Obviously, we have a variety of assets. Some, if you like, are the greyhounds that produce a considerable amount of income, but there are obviously a few Dalmatians, if you like.
Did you say greyhounds?
Greyhounds, yes. I was listening to the analogy in a minute. There are a few Dalmatians, shall we say, who are not quite successful, but I think actually in many ways, heritage property in particular are often managed rather better by other third-party organisations such as the Norwich Preservation Society, who can actually call upon outside funds. So it's not a question that we can sell the Dalmatians to Cruella de Vil, hence the analogy, but we will obviously make sure they go off to good owners.
Did you say Cruella?
Cruella.
Thank you. I'm just about keeping up with the analogy. Thank you very much, Paul. Very entertaining as usual. Mark, did you have something to add?
Only just to highlight the list of assets that we were seeking delegation approval to dispose of are paragraph 3 of the exempt appendix.
Okay, thank you. Any comments or questions from colleagues? No?
No more Disney references or anything else, so yeah. It's like Daisy Smith.
Absolutely. Lucy, if you've got a question. Not about Dalmatians or greyhounds, please.
I hope this isn't in the answer to this, but who's sitting on the Asset and Development Board, which is tasked with disposal of those assets, the many assets, and how do council members, all of us, ensure residents that there's adequate oversight and transparency of its operation? And apologies if that's covered in there. I couldn't locate it in the report.
That's all right.
I can see that Asset and Development Board is really important.
Yeah, it is. Mark?
So the board would be an officer board chaired by John East, to your left, and with a representation from finance, who are key to inputting into that board in terms of reports back to members. So we'd have regular portfolio holder briefings, but also proposing 6 monthly updates to CAPNA on progress.
Thank you. Okay, so the recommendation is on page 281. Can I see all those in favour, please? Thank you very much. That's unanimous. And that is the conclusion of the agenda. Thank you very much, everybody. The final cabinet of the civic year.